I'm celebrating something really big today, and I would love for you to join me. Hi, I'm Jen. If you're new here, I'm delighted to meet you. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I've experienced radical healing on a carnivore diet, and I've devoted my life to helping others do the same. I've had psoriasis since I was 7 years old. It took a while to get diagnosed, and during that time, I was just the second grade freak who was covered in spots. I remember my teacher pulling me aside one day to ask how frequently I bathed because one of the other kids' parents feared that I might have scabies. I was too young to be embarrassed, but looking back, it just makes me really sad. My outbreaks waxed and waned throughout my childhood, but when I was in 5th grade, I had a bad outbreak on my face, and the other kids assumed it was acne, even though we were much too young for that. But one particularly mean kid called me pizza face, and I was like, no, it's psoriasis. But that obviously didn't help at all. I spent much of that school year slathering steroid creams all over my face, all around my mouth and nose. And now that I'm grown, I realized that you should not put steroids on your face like that. And now I'm left with permanent redness caused by excess thinning of the skin around my mouth and nose. In middle school, we were required to wear a uniform for PE class, and I remember having a psoriasis flare so bad during the winter of my 8th grade year that I wore pantyhose under my shorts to make all the spots on my legs less obvious. Can you imagine choosing to wear pantyhose as a 13-year-old girl, running in pantyhose, sweating in pantyhose? It was terrible. In my 20s and 30s, my psoriasis got worse, but I learned to live with it. I'd been on medications all my life, but they were just topical, tars, creams, lotions, and ointments. When my dermatologist would suggest that I try something stronger, like an immunosuppressant injection, I would say, no, I don't really want to deal with the side effects for something cosmetic. Speaking of side effects, did you know that those injections can be so damaging to your liver that you have to have liver function tests every year that you're on them? And you can't get pregnant when you're on them because it's poison. Well, in early 2019, I finally decided to try a pill, not an immunosuppressant injection, but a pill that can clear up psoriasis by decreasing inflammation. I had terrible diarrhea the whole time I was on it, but my skin was clear, 100% clear, for the first time since I was 7 years old. Unfortunately, after about 4 months, the psoriasis came back, even though I was still taking the pill. But by that time, I'd had a taste of what clear skin felt like. I was so much more confident in dating relationships, at the beach, and honestly, even in everyday life when my skin was clear. I had no idea I could feel like that, and I wanted more. So I finally gave in and decided to try an immunosuppressant medication. My doctor assured me that it would work basically forever and that there wouldn't be any significant side effects. Unfortunately, he was wrong on both accounts. Within 2 months, my skin was completely clear. It felt like a miracle to me, but I had a sore throat every day. I thought it was unusual, but I honestly didn't worry too much about it. After 6 months, my skin was still clear, but I had a raging throat infection that ultimately was diagnosed as strep. The sucky thing was that none of the antibiotics my throat doctor was prescribing were touching the strep throat. After a few days, I started coming down with a weird new rash that looked nothing like my psoriasis. It basically looked like blood vessels had burst under my skin. Spoiler alert, that's basically exactly what happened. After seeing a lot of doctors who were all stumped, I finally got a skin biopsy which revealed that the skin rash was caused by leukocytoclastic vasculitis. There are many different things that can cause leukocytoclastic vasculitis, and after this episode I saw several more doctors and none of them could give me a definitive reason for my vasculitis, but they concluded that it was either caused by the severity of my strep throat, a reaction to one of the antibiotics I was on, or caused by my autoimmune disease, which, as we've been discussing, is psoriasis. So I guess it was either bad luck for having an autoimmune disease or it was related to the immunosuppressant injection. What I mean by that is I almost certainly wouldn't have had such a bad strep throat infection and wouldn't have needed all those antibiotics had I not been immunocompromised. Anyway, I finally got past that, but then a few months later, my psoriasis started coming back, even though I was still on the medication, the immunosuppressant medication. I was at my wit's end. My psoriasis got worse and worse over the next few months until it was just raging. It felt like my body was literally exploding. And it got much worse than it had ever been before in my whole life. At this point, I was just sad and angry and humiliated and couldn't understand why my body was betraying me. I also couldn't understand why no doctor could help me. Now, here's the good part, because remember, we're celebrating today. That was about the time I learned about the carnivore diet, and that was the thing that finally brought me true healing. My story had a few more twists and turns after starting the diet, but I eventually got to the point where my skin was clear again, even though at that time I was still on the immunosuppressant medication. Now, I give all the credit of healing to the carnivore diet because I was on the drug, the immunosuppressant medication, when my skin was bad and when my skin finally got clear after I started the diet. My diet was the thing that changed. But the haters will still say that it was the drug that cleared my skin. And I always knew that I eventually wanted to get off the drug, but I was scared. I mean, I'd finally gotten my skin healed up and I was afraid that it might flare up again once I went off the medication. So that was a big risk that I wasn't sure I was ready to take. It took me a while to feel comfortable enough to wean myself off, but eventually I did. I was confident that the carnivore diet had healed me, and I was ready to put that theory to the test. So in the fall of 2022, I took my last shot in my stomach. Today marks 6 months vasculitis-free, psoriasis-free, and medication-free. So if you are feeling stuck, like nothing can help you, I would encourage you to try eating our ancestrally appropriate diet, which you probably already know, I believe is the carnivore diet. And you might get to tell your own story just like this in the near future. Stick around to the end of this video and I'll show you more pictures of my skin at its worst and today. If nothing else, maybe they'll give you some hope. I truly hope that my story in this video provided some encouragement for you, and if so, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd be happy to answer any questions in the comments and I'll help you any way I can. If you want to chat even more, look me up on Instagram where I'm active every day.